you would like to ask any questions at any point, you can use the raise hand function. If you wouldn't like to have any question recorded, just let us know and we can pause the recording. You can also ask questions in writing by using the Q&A function. The speaker can decide to answer your question as they come in or later after the presentation that we will have time for questions. So without taking up any more of your time, I'll hand it over to Ashley, our expert in job interview from Bank of America. Ashley, are you there?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lydia. And hi all, thanks so much for joining. Firstly, I must apologise that you can't see me. Technical issues on my side. The guys in tech are still working to see if they can get a camera set up next door and I go switch rooms, but unfortunately, you'll just be seeing my screen for today, which probably is a good thing for some people. But I just wanted to take this time just to talk through how to stand out in a job interview and where I'm asked to host on. So a bit about me. So I am the recruitment operations lead for EMEA here in the bank. God, I have 13 years of recruitment experience. I was thinking that on the way up to the room and I said, geez, I can't believe I'm that old to have 13 years experience doing one thing. But at this point, so I'm the recruiter for a number of years, a recruitment manager, and now I'm in recruitment operations. So my main goal at the moment, or my main role, is managing kind of core process improvements. I am managing the recruiter development, so a lot of training for recruiters and ensuring we're following processes and a variety of projects that we're managing at the moment. So I have held a number of positions across the talent acquisition team. As I said, I have 7 years at Bank of America, soon to be 8 in June, which we're in June now, so it's coming up. But prior to Bank of America, I worked in Citibank for a year, and then I worked in a number of, we're in a recruitment agency in Dublin for 4 years. So as I said, a lot of recruitment experience. I have an honors degree in business and HR, and I have 2 little girls who are off school this week. So my childminder has them in a playgroup at the moment, but just a bit about me. So in this session, we wanted to focus on how to prepare for an interview, questions that are commonly asked, STAR method, how to follow up after the interview, and the key takeaways. I would like to say I'd love this session to be as interactive as possible. I do think interviews are quite personal, so it's something that everyone must do, but actually we will all do it a number of times in our life, but it's a really hard thing to prepare for. And sorry, I just heard someone asking me to speak slower. Sorry about that. I will do. Definitely an Irish trait that I have, so apologies about that. But in our session, as I said, we'll focus on how to prepare for the interview, questions that are commonly asked, and the STAR method, and how to follow up after an interview. So I know you have already covered with a number of different sessions the CV and the brand call you, but I really wanted to talk through it just slightly because it does really impact how you interview. So your CV is your brand. So it's meant to demonstrate all your key skills. And I know you would have had CV workshops, but it should have kind of brevity and clarity. That is equal to impact. So when you look at your CV and when you're preparing for an interview, a lot of what you're going to do comes and derives from that CV. So if you look at our CV, when I'm preparing for my own interviews, and we've done many interviews in here in the bank as you're moving through, you will do an interview. I probably sit with my CV, I review it, I take out my key achievements, I read through all my roles that I've had, because when you're in an interview, you're going to forget what you did 5 years ago, as a good example. So I'm going to make sure I know that CV by heart. It's my own experience. I should know it, but I won't remember it. So reading through, making sure you really understand what your CV says, and making sure your CV is reflective of your role. So I'll give you an example. When I was back in agency, I met this great girl, and she was a HR business partner, she was calling herself, and she looked brilliant on paper. She was absolutely a stunning candidate for any senior HR role. So she rang me and she said, I applied for 24 jobs, I got 23 interviews, and I haven't got an offer. And I said, come in and I'll do an interview and see where there's obviously something wrong with your interview and where we're impacting. And she didn't. She did a brilliant interview. She wasn't a senior HR business partner. Her focus was on ER. So when I spoke to her, she didn't do half the stuff a senior HR VP did, but she was specialised in ER. Her CV just didn't say that. So if you're getting interviews from your CV and you're not getting the job, there's something wrong with your CV or there's something wrong with your interview skills. It doesn't mean that you're always not the right fit. It actually could be that's not the right role for you. So once she changed her CV to actually reflect what her current role was and what her specialism is, she did 2 more interviews and got both offers because she was interviewing for the right role. So just wants to highlight to you, make sure you actually have everything out and call out your strengths and what you're really good at, because that's what you're going to talk about in the interview. So your CV, it's your personal statement. What is your CV's elevator pitch? You know that's part of your CV. You know, embrace the gap. So I would say to people, if you have a gap in your CV, and many people might have, you know, been out of work for 3 or 4 years. We did a session with returning talent a few years ago, and what I would have said to them is, the gap is not a negative thing. People think, oh, I need to fill it up. You don't. Say I took a career break. Say I was out of work. But embrace the gap. Say I was looking for a job for the last 6 months. And there's nothing wrong. It's all part of the story. You all have experiences through that gap. So don't hide away and try and fill that gap with stuff that, you know, I was doing charity work, I was doing this, that, the other. All our lives are so busy. Embrace the gap if there is one, and make sure you talk about it in the interview. And I just see another question coming up. That is perfect. Same question. So, networking. So if I look at how we network, so this is in advance of getting called for an interview. All our traditional recruiting channels have changed. So if you want to go for an interview, you need to be visible. You need to get called for that interview. So unleash the elevator pitching you. Take responsibility for your own search strategy. So if you want to work in Arnott as a buyer or whatever job you might want to do you know anyone that works at Arnott that can refer you in? And can you reach out through LinkedIn or look through the networks and see if you know people who are there? Make sure that you're using your own network to help you in this search strategy. And that is the key part of when you want to get a role. You know, don't be nervous with asking for help. It is probably the easiest thing for people to refer you on to different people. So moving on to interviews. So how to prepare for an interview. So there's a number of different types of interviews. So you'll have a telephone interview maybe, or a face-to-face, an assessment center, or a Zoom or WebEx. You know, a video conferencing interview. No matter what type of interview you're going to do, you will prep the same way, or you should prep the same way. So if you think it's just a telephone interview, I don't need to spend that much time, so bring me into a face-to-face. They won't unless you do well on the telephone. So just keep in mind when you're doing your prep, no matter what type of interview, you need to prepare the same. Know who you're going to be meeting with. So there's nothing worse than when you meet with someone and they don't know your name. So if your interview or your interview invite doesn't say a name of who you're going to be meeting with, ask who you're meeting with. Look them up. Look up their LinkedIn profile. And, you know, you might have something in common. They may have been from the same town you were in or the same school, or they may have had the last same role or worked in the same place before. So know who you're meeting with. Know, would it be a future manager? Would it be a peer? Would it be a stakeholder or a client? So depending on who you're meeting with, you're going to change your interview style. And always remember to smile and make eye contact. So if you saw me sitting in this room right now, I'm smiling. It's a habit I have. If you smile, you sound happier. If you change your elevations in your voice. If you don't smile, you generally sound quite moody and quite closed off and quite direct, and your tones don't change as much. So when I'm interviewing, I'm always going to smile. I remind myself to smile during the interview. It will make a huge change on the interview's ability to read your tone. Dress smart. So I used to say to people, you know, make sure you dress smart. And there's been a number of memes over the last few years of where people go to a video interview and they stand up and they've a pair of shorts on with a shirt and a jacket. Make sure you dress smart, no matter what the occasion is. If it's a telephone, they're not going to see it. But you want to feel professional. So if you're sitting there in your pajamas doing a telephone interview, you're still going to be sluggish. Make sure you get up, get dressed as you would for a normal interview, and make sure to dress smart if you're going in. But dress appropriately. So Again, some feedback from people that interview on Google or Facebook. They go in and they wear their full suit and you won't get a job because actually that's not the culture in there. So know where you're going to, know the culture in there. And, don't overdress. You don't want to be the only one sitting in a suit when everyone else is wearing jeans and slacks. But you do want to dress smart and dress appropriately for the interviews. Try and engage with all interviewers. And this is really hard if there's a panel and one person is asking a question because you automatically look at them to answer them. But try and make sure if there's 4 people sitting in front of you or 2 or 3, that you've given each of them enough time and that you're looking in their eyes and engaging eye contact. And do always ask great questions. So before an interview, ask 2 or 3 questions. Know what questions you're going to ask. And I'll cover this off later, but make sure you do ask questions. So the first part when you go to do your interview prep is research the company. So the amount of feedback I get from managers when we're rejecting candidates is they knew nothing about this company, they knew nothing about me or about the role, they didn't even read the job spec. It seems basic, but when you're focusing on your interview skills, as someone who doesn't interview very often, you could easily just go and try and prepare your own CV and make sure you're ready in there on the day. Make sure you research the company. So look up the company website. But what I love to do, and I would always tell people to do, is Google news the company. So if you click on search the company name in Google and put the news, you'll see any news articles that are coming up. And they'll generally have a news section on their website as well. But do both. Know who you're meeting with. Know if they've had any achievements, any awards in the company. So search around the company's website a bit. As I said, know your interviewers. LinkedIn, search them, see if any people that you know in common, mutual connections, or what their behavior and background is. And use Google. Look up their name. They could have won an award for something or attended an award ceremony accepting something on behalf of the company. Knowing that shows you that interest to even spend the time researching. The spec. So what is the role actually doing? So every job description is made of the same. We'll generally have your summary at the top, the responsibilities of the role, and the skills that are required underneath. It's a standard job template that most companies are going to use. So when you know, look up the responsibilities. You may not have experience in any of those responsibilities, but I'm telling you, if you got called for an interview, you have the skill. So when I'm preparing someone for an interview, I will always say, if they called you for an interview, they already want to hire you. They want to know more. They want to know if you're right for the role. So everything you do in that interview determines whether you get a job or not. If they don't call you for an interview, you didn't have the skills. But if they do already got the skills for the role, actually how can you demonstrate your ability to do this? So talking through the responsibilities, seeing where that links with your experience, making sure you link it back to your experience, and looking at the skills and talking and being able to demonstrate in an interview what skills can you replicate or can you go into with your own experience that will give you the skills to do the role, and how can you demonstrate them in a clear way in the interview. So for your interview, you should know your CV, as I said before. Know what skills and competencies are coming out of your interview. And I'm going to say to you, you need to prepare 5 examples. And when we go through the STAR method, I'm going to go through that in a bit more detail. But know 5 examples you can talk through about your experience. So a great tip I got about 10 years ago was those 5 examples that you're going to think of. I say think of 3 of your best days in work, 3 of your biggest achievements, and 2 of the worst. The worst days, they're the ones you're going to remember in an interview. So things that went really wrong or that didn't work for you, that was the most stressful, they're the examples you want to use. And again, I'll talk you through in the STAR method, but create 5 examples of what was the best things you've ever done and what are the worst things that ever happened to you in work. Be specific. Talk about the scope and scale of what you manage. Stakeholder management, if you had it, what kind of communications, if there was something complex that you did in the role, and if you didn't need to do any negotiations, or what the main attributes were. What is the big sell? So what is your elevator? What are you great at? Someone always is great at something. So you might have a really good skill of having a great attention to detail. You have a bit of OCD at home, and that will transfer into having a great attention to detail. Why would you be a good fit? And again, I'd reiterate, you need to fit in with the organization, but actually the organization needs to fit you. Sometimes it's not a negative thing to get a job because you were in the right culture fit. And if you know you did well in the interview but you didn't get it, maybe you just wouldn't fit into the team. And that is a good thing if you haven't started, you may not have got the right training or the right development, or you may have not been able to progress. And I'll change. I was doing interviews last year. We were looking for a number of recruiters for the team, and I interviewed this great girl, and the feedback, I was like, she would have been brilliant if we could have hired her 2 months ago, or if we could hire her in 6 months. But right now, in capacity of the team, we've 6 new recruiters with no in-house experience. We can't take another one on. It wouldn't be fair to her. She wouldn't be able to succeed in this role because we don't have the time to put in. That's why we need this experience. And it was disappointing because we would have hired her 2 months before or 6 months after. But actually, she's someone we'd love to rehire. So she didn't get the job at the time, but we wouldn't have been able to develop her or give her the time, and it wouldn't have let her to succeed. And it wouldn't have been fair on her to bring her on. So again, as I said, it's not always a negative thing if you don't get the interview. Maybe it's just not the right time. So think of everything as a positive. The importance of building rapport. So again, smiling, trying to lose the nervousness, taking a few minutes to start to adjust, and taking joint responsibility. So you may be interviewing the interviewee at the time, but you want to be able to have a communication, have a conversation. There's nothing worse if you're interviewing someone and they're giving you yes, no answers, or if they're just telling you all about their experience without asking a question back, or trying to keep the conversation going. So if I met you in a pub and we were talking about what you did, having conversation around it, the interview should feel like a conversation. It shouldn't feel like a test. So competency-based interviewing, I am going to ask the question, has anyone ever done a competency-based interview before? Is this something that you're used to seeing, or is it something that's thrown you before? So I'll give it a few minutes to see if anyone can. Someone said yes. It's a tricky one, and this is where I love in-face training sessions. So if you've done a competency-based interview, and I'm sorry, the formatting on the right seems to have messed up, but the competency-based interview, it generally throws a lot of people when they hear they're going to get a competency-based interview. So it shouldn't. Most people, most companies, most multinationals, most large companies, or even retail or hospitality industry will do competency-based interviews all the time now. So what's different? So how do you prepare for competency-based interviews? So you're going to do the same preparation that you would do for any other interview. So this is going to be an interview prep that you do for everywhere you go to. You'll always go through your CV, learn your experience, know what you've done in different time frames and what your key achievements are in each role. But for a competency-based interview, this is where you prepare those 5 examples I was talking about before. So consider your examples of your abilities ahead of time. As I said, pick out 3 of your best days and 2 of your worst. Why I ask people to consider 2 of their worst is, if you create these examples, those 2 of your worst will show you how you can learn from something. So you showed resilience generally. It will show a lot of things, problem solving. It will generally show you a lot of competencies by how you answer that question and how you give that example. So relate to job's key competencies to your ability. So when you're looking through a spec, they'll generally say, we're looking for someone who has strong communication or is flexible. These are all the types of competencies you'll generally see. And I've given you typical competency-based questions. But if you Google competency-based questions, if you spend time and look through them all, they're all going to say the same thing. So if I look at the first one, demonstrate how you vary your communication approach according to the audience that you're addressing. Or tell me about time you need to explain something you knew well to someone who had difficulty understanding the subject. What did you do? How did you go? You can see those 2 competency-based questions focusing solely on the communication skill. The next time, tell me about a time where you experienced conflict with another team member, or how did you maintain good working relationships with your colleagues? That's all about teamwork. They're testing how you work in a team, how you navigate yourself. So if you look at typical competency-based questions, they're all going to have the same type of questions, but it's all driving from these type of competencies that we're always going to get. When you create those 5 examples, so 3 of your best days, 2 of your worst, I can tell you you're going to showcase all those competencies. So that's why I say prepare the competence or the examples before you start, and then look back and make sure that you're not leaving a competency-based question out. So the STAR method, this is how you answer a competency-based question. So if I ask you, demonstrate how you may vary your communication approach according to the audience that you're addressing, you want to answer with a situation. Describe the situation you're in or the task that you need to accomplish. You must describe a specific event or situation, not a generalized description of what you've done in the past. Then you're going to look at the task. So what was your responsibility? So a lot of people give examples and they start with, I did this and this time, but they didn't tell you what the situation was before or what their role was in solving it. And what actions did you take? Keep a focus on you. And then the results. Most people will forget to give the results. So what did you learn? What did you change about your behavior going forward? Did you change a process that you were currently doing because it didn't work? And this STAR method, as I said, it's really hard to learn the different aspects and remember to put them all in. But when you're writing an example, start with what was the situation. So think of the 5 examples and think what was the situation I was in. What did I need to do? What was my responsibility to fix it? What action did I take? So how did I get to the results? And then remembering to talk about the results. And the results don't always need to be positive. You don't want to focus on the negative too much, but make sure the results are realistic and what really happened. So I want to give you one of my examples. Or if someone on the call wants to give an example, happy to listen and see, what way you could have answered it different or better. But if I give my example of what I would do, so I remember being asked, tell me how you had difficulty changing your process or difficulty working with hiring managers, since it was the question. And I will always think back, and this is one of my examples I use in every interview. So I will say, I worked with a hiring manager. He was managing the settlement team, my most difficult hiring manager. And this was when I was recruiting, my example that I gave. My most difficult hiring manager. So I knew that everything I did, he was going to challenge. Generally quite a difficult relationship between the two of us. So we had 2 roles that we couldn't fill from for about 6 months. Couldn't get candidates, and he definitely felt like we weren't doing the work we were delivering. So what I had to do was see how I could change the results and change the relationship between the 2 of us. So what I did was I started recording. So I put in a weekly meeting with him. And just so he was constantly upset, he was chasing me on emails 3 or 4 times a day, asking for updates, which you weren't going to have in an hour. So I put a weekly meeting in and said, listen, outside of what we do on a day-to-day, we'll meet once a week and I'll show you the progress and I'll keep a track. And I started a tracker of all the candidates we sent, all the candidates that we're interviewing, what work we'd done in the background, just so I could demonstrate what he was. The result was, after about 3 weeks of doing this, he stopped the email. I cut the email traffic in half. And because he was getting constant updates, he would hold off and send me an email on Tuesday if he knew we were meeting on a Wednesday. He allowed me the time to actually go and do what I was trying to do for him instead of having to constantly update. And actually, once we changed our behaviour, we really got the candidate identified in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I actually put that person in place with managers. So now when I'm meeting with the manager, I will put a meeting in and I'll keep them constantly updated weekly, just to ensure that we're all on the same page. Content, not traffic, which is X, Y, and Z. And if you listen to that example, and I generally do it quite better in an interview, but if you listen to that example, you can see how I'm talking about a challenging hiring manager, how I showed resilience, how I changed my communication style with over communicating, how I was organized. Those are 4 or 5 different competencies I could have answered. How to work with a difficult person. 5 competencies I could have answered with that in one example. If I prepare 5, no matter what competency-based question I'm getting asked, I'm going to be able to answer them. So just before we move on, and I just see a question coming in here, does anyone have any questions? So I understand the STAR method, but struggle with identifying my examples. And how do I tease out my examples for a varied experience? So I think if you take the hint of taking those 3 best days or biggest achievements you've had in work and the 2 worst ones, if you think about it, or if you're brave enough on the session, you want to, I don't know if we can open the session that we can make it more interactive and they can ask online if you want to. But if you think of your 3 best days or biggest achievements you've had in your work, and it can be anything down to back to college when you did a project example, it's identifying those examples. And the ones, that, as I said, that you'll come up with is 3 best and 2 worst. You're never going to forget them examples because they're real life, stuff that's happened to you. So to try and work on the 3 best ones and then sit down and write out, star, and say, what was the situation? And write your example. So you should have a 5 or 6 line paragraph talking through this example, no matter what question you get asked. This example or these 5 examples, you're going to answer it one of them. But if you're struggling to identify an example, just think of your worst and best days. What were you most proud of the work you did? What was your biggest achievement? And what didn't go well? So, did you have conflicts with another team member? People think I can't talk about anything negative in here. But generally, we've all had something negative that happened through work. And again, as I said, it shows the challenging individual dealing in a challenging environment, shows resilience, maybe shows how you might need to change skills, and how you're adaptable. So it's never a negative to bring it in. Does that answer your question? Right. And again, as I said, definitely, if you try this at home and create 5 examples, you're never going to fail in a competency-based interview. So just talking about the logistics. So I always laugh because when I came to interview here in Bank of America, I had done a practice run the day before. I drove out here. I knew where I was going. And I said, great, it takes me about 40 minutes. I'll give myself an hour tomorrow. And I knew where I needed to go. I knew how I got there. I knew what I was asking for. I knew to bring ID. I knew everything. I thought I was reset. I prep people for interview all the time. And I got here and I couldn't find the car park. So I arrived 25 minutes beforehand and I ended up double parking across the road, hoping I didn't get clamped the whole time at the interview because I was late. And I couldn't find an entry into a car park where I could just pay easily. So as much as I thought I'd done so much prep, park, make sure you know how far it's going to be, give yourself loads of extra time. There was traffic on the day, and make sure you leave a lot of time for traffic and you know where you're going, which door you're going into. The amount of candidates come into the interview here in Bank of America. We have 2 buildings next door to each other, Block C or Block D. It will say which one on your interview invite. But some people go to the wrong building. And by the time the receptionist realizes they're in the wrong building, they're late. So know where you're going, know who you need to ask for, know which building you're going to or where you're going to in the building, and what you need to bring with you. I always say to people, bring a copy of your CV. I've never been asked for a copy of my CV in an interview. And always have it in my bag just in case, but never have I been asked. But I know that we have done 1 or 2 interviews where we've had an old CV on file. So the manager's been sent an old CV. Actually, you've updated it 6 months ago, but it never updated on your profile. And the CV will automatically be pulled from your profile if you haven't updated it. You didn't realize they're going in with an old CV. So always bring a copy of your CV. And don't forget to turn off your phone. So if you looked at me in this meeting now, I don't switch it to just turn it mute. I turn the vibrate off, I mute it, I turn it upside down. I don't know whether someone's notified me. I can't feel it in my pocket because if you're answering a question and you feel the vibration in your pocket, you are going to automatically think, who is that? And it'll lose your train of thought. So either turn it off or turn off vibration. I'm saying that you're making sure that you have your full attention and you're not going to be distracted. So how do you stand out? So what can you do differently than everyone else that attends these interviews? So realize that when you go to an interview, you're probably one of 3 in a good scenario. Some people interview 5 people, some people interview 6 people. Most people interview 2 or 3 people for a role based on your CV. The conversation that you're going to make, be approachable, asking them about them, asking them about themselves and, you know, what they did or how their career was. Make yourself stand out in an interview, but always afterwards. After the interview, always follow up with an email within 24 hours. I get these all the time because we obviously tell people, and a lot of recruiters tell you, follow up with an email. But most of the emails I see within 24 hours either say, just want to email and say, thank you to John for meeting with me yesterday. When will I get feedback? And that's, you know, it's a double edge. You obviously want to ask a question, but you don't want to just thank them for the time. So make it engaging. There's a huge difference for me when I see an email just saying that. I'll generally respond to the candidate saying, you know, we'll expect to have feedback within the next 5 or 6 days, and, you know, thanks so much for your note. And I'll let the manager know I've received an email, but I'm not going to forward it to the manager because there's no need for me to log up their emails with everyone that follows up after an interview. But if I saw an engaging email, so, hi Ashley, just wanted to follow up after my interview with John yesterday. You know, he spoke a lot about his career. I was really interested in. I forgot to mention that actually, you know, when I look back on my experience in the settlement, this was it. Or, Ashley, just wanted to follow up after my interview yesterday. Really didn't think it went well. You know, he asked me about a question about this, and it didn't actually go really well, my answer. Or I was really nervous in the interview. Giving them the reasons why you didn't do well, or make it engaging, make someone want to read it, not just a 2-line thank you. If you're going to send an email, make sure it has a purpose. I can tell you there's 2 candidates in here, 2 employees that we interviewed and we weren't going to offer until we got that email saying how nervous they were, how they messed up the question on the teamwork, and I just waffled on. I totally could have gave a different example. When I interviewed for Citibank, I remember at the end they said, do you have any questions? And I said, I just wondered if I could change my answer to this question. I said, it definitely wasn't the right example to give you. And I seemed to waffle on. I was quite nervous. And they said, yeah. And I changed my example. And I got the job. Now, I don't know if I was a bit cheeky to do it at the time. But in recruitment, you know, as a recruiter who's interviewing, you should know what questions you weren't answering right. But I love people to follow up and say, actually, I was really nervous. Because when we're deciding between candidates, you know, it's sometimes a flip of a coin going, this person demonstrated they had X, Y, and Z. But actually, if I got that email, I knew they were really nervous. I knew they didn't answer that question well, but actually the rest of the interview went well. And I really think they had the skills. That could totally flip my answer. In most of the cases, we'll bring them back in for a second round. So they're having another opportunity to sell themselves. And they tend to get the offer. So there's 2 employees here we were definitely not rejecting until we got that email. So follow up after the interview within 24 hours with an email if you think it's necessary. So you can just say, you know, thanks for your time and, you know, when do I expect feedback? Then they're not going to send it on to the manager. If you talk about something about the role or have a question about the role or, you know, something directly to the hiring manager or whoever interviewed you, we're going to send it on. So make sure it's engaging and ask a question, not just when you should hear back. When should you expect feedback? So I always think it's within 5 days. That's our metric in here, that you get feedback in 5 days. And I will say, some people don't realise how fast the 5 days slips by. So as a hiring manager, you could meet John on a Monday. You could think he's brilliant, but actually you've got an interview on Thursday and Friday. If you're going to reject John, you would have done it on Monday. But if you're going to wait and see how the interviews go on Thursday or Friday, even though you're your preferred candidate, you have to meet all of them. They won't come back to you until the next Monday. So within 5 days, realistically, you should expect feedback. I used to think before I went into recruitment, if you didn't hear anything, it was a bad thing. No news is not bad news. If someone's a no, they'll know pretty quickly. If you're not a no, they're taking their time deciding if you're the right candidate, if you're the strongest candidate for the role, but actually you genuinely can do the role. So follow up with an email within 24 hours, thanking them more, asking maybe when should you hear back if you don't ask it in the interview. Don't harass the hiring manager. Everyone deserves interview feedback. It's one of my biggest things. I remember interviewing for a job 7 or 8 years ago, but I never got feedback. And I still remember the interviewer. I still remember the job I went for, and it was the most annoying thing because they never came back and said yes or no, and I'd taken my time out of the day. Everyone should get feedback from an interview, yes or no, why you weren't suitable, what could you learn from. Don't harass the hiring manager. Send an email within 5 days. You haven't heard back. Just wondering if there's any update. And if they don't respond to you, again, follow up with another email 4 or 5 days later. You don't know what's going on with them. They may have gone on holidays for a week. The kids could be sick and they're out of the office. There could be other reasons, but don't think of it as a negative if you don't get it. I will say that if you haven't received feedback within 10 to 15 days, you should be constantly talking to the recruiter. And if you haven't, keep following up with an email. I would. If I hadn't heard something, I wish I'd done it. But as I said, don't harass the person that interviewed you or the hiring manager. Follow up with the HR or the recruitment team. And, make it positive. They're not giving you feedback because they don't want it. They actually probably don't have it, but there's probably a reason around it. I see another question coming in there. What to do when you know the interview process has been started? The desired candidate has been selected before the interview process, and the process is to give the pretense that all is fair and equal. I don't think anyone, I obviously speak from experience in here, but I've never seen an interview happen where the candidate has already been selected and there's no reason for bringing you in. So, like that, when I said about you met John on Monday and John was the star candidate, you'd love to hire him, but you had 2 other interviews and you wanted to see how they got on. So, for me, you already believe the desired candidate has been selected. But we haven't gone to Oscar. We haven't told John that. There's nothing that, determines John's definitely going to join the company. So just because you believe the desired candidate is already selected, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be another opportunity come up in the team in the next few months or in a different team. Go and be as professional as you can, as you would if you were interviewing for the role, even if you believe that the candidate has already been selected, and they might have been already selected. There could be another role opportunity opening up because of it, or there could be another role in the team in 2 months' time. If you make a positive impact, you will always go back. So as I said, when I interviewed that candidate, I was probably the only person last January, February, and I said I couldn't hire her because she didn't have enough experience. She is someone I'd love to work with in the future. She was amazing, and I didn't offer her the job. We're bringing her to second round, but she was an amazing candidate. At a different period in our team, we would have hired her. So if you think, it's a good experience for you to do an interview. You get to practice your interview skills, and generally it's not a time waste. There may be something else coming up in future that will really help you kind of hone your interview skills, or they might say, actually, that girl's really good, but she could bring it for Adrian's team. I know there might be someone leaving in Adrian's team, but he's trying to get headcount approved. So always go in with an open mind, even if you feel the interview's not going well. Definitely make sure that you kind of go in and present yourself as you would if you felt the interview was going well. I didn't actually realise, I didn't create a deck about or a slide on how to ask a question during an interview. So I'm going to just go back to that because I said I'd talk about it later. But during the interview, have questions prepared before you go into the interview, what you want to ask. I always would want to know when I expect to hear back. So if you ask the question, they could say, well, the interview's all this week, it could probably be early next week. Then it manages your expectations if you ask that question. I generally steer away from salary. Not that it's a bad thing to talk about salary, it's just not the appropriate time. So you've applied for the job. They probably know your current salary or what your expectations are when they're interviewing you, which means they can pay that amount. And when you get the offer, they're going to talk the same thing. There's nothing in that interview that can benefit from you talking about salary in the interview, unless the hiring manager brings it up and they're thinking of making an offer. But I would, because you don't want to get turned down for salary expectations. Or, if you're in the interview and you say, I really want 40, and they just came to you for wanting 40, whereas you actually would have accepted 35, and that was the highest they go for. You keep your salary for yourself, unless they ask the question you're comfortable with talking about it. But I steer away from salary questions. A great question to ask someone is, tell me about your career. How did you get to here? Or where did you start it? Because it'll generally bring them back to either the role that you're going for, or where they were at your stage in their career, or it's great to kind of kill 5 minutes in the interview, especially if it's awkward. Letting them talk about it. Ask about, what do you think I would need to do this role, or what strengths do you think are needed to do this role or skills, what do you think is the one thing that people wouldn't enjoy about this role? Because then you can have a conversation around it and say, oh, actually, I did that. If they say this is going to be the most critical part or most difficult part of the role, actually, I did, I understand that because I actually did a similar role to that when I was in X, Y, and Z. So making sure you're asking relevant questions. So ask them about the role, ask them about their career, how they got there. Why do you think this company is so special? Or, make it sound nice, but you're really wanting to know why you want the job. When you leave that interview, you should want the job. If you don't, it's not going to work. So the key takeaways for interview prep: embrace the gap. So if there is a gap in your CV, please don't hide it. I see people trying to hide it all the time. Don't. We knew about your gap interviewing it. Talk about it. Talk through what you did at the time. Have an elevator pitch and don't be shy to use it. So what are your key strengths? Know what they are. Preparation is key. So, if you fail to prepare, it's not going to work out in the interview. Making sure you take the time in. I am in recruitment 13 years. If I'm doing an interview, I'm spending 4 or 5 hours doing an interview prep session, remembering my experience, remembering my achievements, remember what I did well in every role, because you forget. You forget the big projects you worked on, and never stop networking. So make sure that, you're talking to people, you're talking afterwards, even after meeting the interview. I'm not saying go every time you interview with someone, go and add them on LinkedIn. You look them up afterwards on LinkedIn again and, send them a message saying thank you, or, any questions you have. Don't stop networking. Let me just make sure I've answered it. Okay, so there's a question here. How long or short should your responses to a competency-based question be? 1 to 2 minutes. If you talk for 1 to 2 minutes, that's enough talking. So they shouldn't be 30 seconds. So if you think about an interview, most people might say it's an hour slot. It's either 30 minutes or 45 minutes. They're never going to take the full hour. So if you break down the timescales, they're going to spend 10 minutes, 5 minutes on introduction, welcoming you, learning a bit about you, and for you to talk about yourself. The next 10 might be the type of experience you have or the role. And then they probably give 10 minutes to competency-based interviews. The longer you talk, the less questions you're going to be asked. One thing I'll say. So when I prepare those 5 examples, I try and not talk. Stop talking. I try and build a few examples in. The best thing an interviewer could say to you is, actually, I don't have any other questions. Or you've already answered all my questions, because that means you've given rounded, well-versed answers. But a competency-based question, your response should take 1 to 2 minutes. And that's talking through the situation, the task, what you did, what your role in the action was, and the result. Have we any other, I think that's where we were, if anyone had any questions. Have we any other questions?
Hey everyone, if you have any question, you can type it in the Q&A box over there, and Ashley will answer for your question.
Mission raise a hand.
Ashley, thank you very much for your information. It's very useful tips for our participants. Thank you very much.
I can see Mission has raised a hand, but I can't see a question in yet. Are Bank of America hiring? We're always hiring. At the moment, Bank of America is a great company to work for as well. It's a great place, and we always take people, our entry-level roles, we don't require experience. We look at skills. We aren't really hiring at the moment. So since last January, we haven't had a hiring pause. It's the worst word. We used to call it a hiring freeze, and I said we'll stop using it. But we are doing a review, and we're slowing down opening roles because we've overhired last year. Most companies actually did. Once we get the headcount back in line, we'll start hiring. We've probably got, I know because I did a report on it yesterday, we have 55 roles open across EMEA, only 19 posted. But obviously it depends on skills, and a lot of the roles we've open at the moment aren't entry-level roles, they're more the experienced hires. We do have great graduate programs and internship hiring that aren't impacted by our freeze, but if you look at the Careers at Bank of America website, definitely there'll be loads of roles hopefully up there. And I'd say we'll really start to see recruitment turn August, September this year is what we're hoping for. But yes, it's a great place to work in here. So if you are interested, definitely feel free to apply in. Any other questions? Still got 11 minutes. If you are looking for jobs and how to know how to apply for them, definitely look at the experience. If they say you need experience in banking, they can't hire someone that doesn't have it. If they say banking experience is preferred, not desired, or not critical, then apply in. You know, we're hiring for a HR generalist out in Saudi at the moment, and I was talking to the hiring manager about it a few weeks ago, and I said, you know, what do you look for? And he goes, I just want, I always thought I needed someone with experience, but I don't. I need them to know about HR. I need them to have a degree in HR. I need them to want a career in it. But actually, I just want someone who wants to learn, who wants to come in, learn it from the ground up, will have great ideas, and be able to develop. And the last HRD who worked there for 5 years before progressing throughout the bank. And she had no experience coming in and did brilliant, and that's why he changed his search. But what I'd say is we changed it to, you know, banking essential is fair, but not critical. HR experience is essential because we need someone who's done some sort of HR as a HRD. But look at those criteria and make sure you match it, then you won't get disappointed. The competition-based and scenario-based questions, could you explain the difference? So competition-based and scenario-based are really the same thing. So there isn't much difference. So if you Google both sets of questions, a scenario-based is the competency-based questions we were talking about. So these are where they want to give examples based on the competencies that you have and skills. A competition-based, if you Google it, it's really the same thing. You should always just have those examples ready. So if you have 5 examples ready, you're always going to be asked whatever question it is. Normally, there's 2 different types of interviews, which would be in Ireland, which would be biographical, which is just going through your CVs, and competency-based. But they're quite similar. In the case where it's hiring team telling you that they cannot send feedback due to a large number of applicants, should you still ask? 100%. No one should be giving you that feedback. But I would caveat that is, you should expect interview feedback. If you apply for a role and you don't get feedback, I wouldn't ask. You maybe, you know, if you look back, you can generally see your CV didn't match the criteria, or they may have had 100 applications. So we shut off roles generally. We'll unpost role once we reach 150 or 200 applications. So some roles we post, we get 200 applications in overnight. So someone has to screen all those CVs and see who's relevant and nice, you know, and right for the role. And if you look, we probably get 30 seconds. If I got 200 applications for the role, and the role I'm talking about was an AML onboarding specialist, we were looking for 2 to 3 years of experience. And this example came up 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were looking for 2 to 3 years of AML experience. Automatically, we're going to review those 200 CVs. We're going to not decline anyone until we see what else is there. But if you've any way AML experience, we're going to put you to screen stage. On our system, if you've no AML experience, we're going to reject you. And we're going to send an automatic email because actually there was 3 candidates or 5 candidates, or I think in this case there were 13 candidates who had AML experience. We were never going to call all 13 in for interview. So what we could do then is really criteria it down. So actually I could see they had AML onboarding experience, and not just AML, they had the onboarding experience, same team we're looking for. So that's how we shortlist. So if you're applying for jobs, they can get 200, they can get 1,000 applications for every job. They aren't going to have time to call back every candidate and say, this is why you didn't get it. We will have triggers that will say minimum job requirements not met. And a minimum job requirements aren't met. That's the one I select most candidates to. And it's because actually their skills weren't what we had posted. So we asked for 2 years of experience, you'd none. we move you to minimum job performance not met. Or I can move you to a status that says, you know, possibly further different roles. And that's not the title of what we moved it, but it's a candidate who we'd like them to contact us again. We'd like them to apply in for other roles. And actually, their CVs are really skilled, but actually it's just not this time through a stronger candidate that is presented. If you have the experience and you're applying into Bank of America and that we've asked for on the job description, 95% of the time you're going to get a call from our sourcing team trying to find out more about you. But if you just apply to a role and you don't hear feedback, they should always reject you saying yes or no. Timing isn't great. So if you think that they should review 200 applications or 400, and it could be one person with back-to-back meetings all day, we try and get to every external candidate within 48 hours. We've met the requirements the last few months because our volumes are low. But last year, I know there was a number of candidates probably sitting at about 7 or 8 days without anyone reviewing their CV because people didn't have capacity. So you should hear back within a week or two. If you don't, maybe the role's on hold behind the scenes, probably a reason they haven't come back to you. But I wouldn't ask for feedback if it's just an application. But on an interview, I would definitely ask for feedback. And again, it depends on how you ask. So I will generally give, if people ask me in a positive way, so if I ring and say, listen, you know, just letting you know, unfortunately, we're not going to progress you any further. Some people, 90% of people I speak to will go, oh no, that's okay. And you know, is there any feedback? And if they look like that, I'm always going to get the exact feedback that the manager gave. I'm always going to tell them where they went wrong, or where they could have changed their answer for the next time, or what let them down in an interview. And I'm going to give really honest feedback so they can work on it for the next time. But there is 5 to 10% of people out there, and I'll ring and say, you didn't get the job, and they argue with you. I don't agree with that. Or, you know, I really thought I was working well, I don't understand why I don't get it. So they're starting the conversation in negative. I'm not going to want to disclose everything for them to be able to fight back with me more. Maybe that makes me a bit of a coward, but, you know, if you're going to argue with feedback, there's a way of saying, oh, geez, I can't believe it came across like that, because actually I do have that skill. I'm, you know, quite annoyed at myself. And again, I can take that feedback back to the manager and say, I gave John feedback, and he actually have done that. You know, do you want to reconsider? So making it always positive when you're getting feedback from interviews is great. But if you've just applied, I wouldn't bother asking for feedback unless you think you were really right for it, and then I would. Is there any other questions? Lily, have I missed out on anything, or is there anything new?
Okay, if there will be any other question. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you very much, Ashley. There will be any other presentation? Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, you know, you'll find me on, you have my name at the start of this presentation, but you'll find me on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out, ask any questions, you know, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to send you in the right direction, or if you need a bit of support, definitely feel free to reach out to me and connect with me on LinkedIn if I can do anything for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Ashley. So I think that's all. That question is gone. If there will be any other question, the participants can send the question to me and I will transfer to you. So thank you very much, everyone, for being there. Thank you, Ashley, for your presentation. Thank you, everyone.